The biggest difference that most people will notice straight away is that design, and we know it's gone away from the round side rails and pointy edges to that new boxy flat design that we have with the S25 Ultra, and the glossy side rails from the S23 Ultra at this point are long gone. And I do actually think that this design change is great because it's made the S25 Ultra just look and feel a lot more premium than it already did over the last couple of years. And if you've been into a store or held someone else's S25 Ultra, you'll realize that this is just so much lighter now because Samsung have distributed that weight a little better than they had from the S24 Ultra and definitely from the S23 Ultra, because year on year it has lost a little bit of weight, so it's not as heavy as it was a couple of years ago. And actually this is one of the most notable changes that you'll see. Now the other big change is the S Pen, and if you still have the S23 and S24 Ultra, you still have Bluetooth and can do all of those air gestures, but this year, for no good reason really, Samsung decided to remove the Bluetooth feature from the S25 Ultra's S Pen. So if you are a big fan of S Pen and you were to use it as a remote camera shutter or use anything to do with those air gestures, if you did upgrade from the S23 or even the S24 Ultra, you're going to lose them completely. Again, I'm not quite sure why Samsung has done this. I assume it is to save a little bit of money, but again, it's something that they didn't really need to remove, but they have, and if you upgrade, you're going to lose that feature. And then maybe the smallest one, but it's definitely one of my favorites. So on the S23 Ultra, of course, we had the always on display, but then we got the upgraded always on display on last year's S24 Ultra. And of course, that's still here on the S25 Ultra. And it's being able to have that wallpaper on all of the time. And I know not everybody likes this and they think it's a bit of a battery drainer, but really you don't notice the battery drain. But this is definitely one of my favorite features on the newer Galaxy phones. And it's something maybe to consider if you were to upgrade from the S23 Ultra, because personally I think it looks great. But the biggest change from the S23 Ultra is definitely software, and initially it makes it look like the S23 Ultra is a couple of years behind, but actually it just really isn't. You get a good chunk of the AI features across all three phones. So the S23 Ultra gets everything the S24 Ultra has, and the S24 Ultra has everything the S25 Ultras have. So if you want to upgrade for the AI features solely, then there really isn't a point here. Object Eraser is an example here. It might not do as good of a job as the newer Galaxy phones or the S25 Ultra, for example, but it is just as quick. You get call assist, browsing assist, and interpreter. So really, AI feature-wise, you are absolutely covered. The problem is the S25 Ultra just feels much snappier, and of course it will do because of its newer Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, but it does feel much quicker than the S23 Ultra, even if that feels the same as the S24 Ultra. A lot of this is just down to One UI 7, which is coming to all the Galaxy phones eventually. We're not sure when, but it will come. And you can actually even get the One UI 7 beta now on the S24 Ultra. And this just means that we expect a lot of what is new to eventually come to the S24 Ultra and the S23 Ultra. And even though there might be a couple of features missing, for the most part, you'll get a lot of what is already on the S25 Ultra. But for me, what's more interesting is what is the same between these phones. So over the past couple of years, Samsung haven't given us some huge upgrades. So it actually means if you're on the S23 Ultra, you really haven't missed out over the past couple of years. The display is pretty much the exact same despite some Gorilla Glass upgrades. And the only real difference here is peak brightness, which you really aren't going to notice. And maybe the fact that the display ditched the curve last year and is now giving us this new flat design. I feel like watching content is pretty much the same experience, but let me just mention it one more time. The anti-reflective coating on the S24 and S25 Ultra really does make a difference, especially in outdoors. While the S25 Ultra display might look better, it's because the bezels are uniform and a little bit slimmer, and because of that, it's slightly more immersive, and it does give you a 0.1 inch bigger display, but seeing that difference is really quite difficult. And something else which is the same that's only been tinkered with a little bit over the last couple of years is the cameras. The S25 Ultra is still using the same 200 megapixel sensor and the same 10 megapixel 3x optical sensor from the S23 Ultra. Then we see the slight changes that started with the S24 Ultra. So they did away with the 10 times optical of the S23 Ultra and replaced it with a 50 megapixel 5 times telephoto camera, which is still the exact same on the S25 Ultra. And then the S25 Ultra replaced the 12 megapixel ultra wide that was on the S23 and S24 Ultra for a new 50 megapixel ultra wide. So there have been slight upgrades over the past few years, but the benefit of those upgrades is pretty small. You can compare photos here taken on all three phones, and starting with that main lens, the only real difference is the processing of the images. So the S23 Ultra seems a little bit more vibrant than the S25 Ultra, and then the S24 Ultra is somewhere in between. I actually much prefer the newer look on the S25 Ultra, but to be honest, there really isn't much of a difference between all three phones. When it comes to optical, that is when we lost the 10 times optical last year and it was replaced with the 5 and 3 times, which I think is actually much better, because how often did you actually need that 10 times optical? The quality was great, but it was mostly impractical. When we look at that 3 times optical, it actually has the same story as the main lens. It looks a little bit more muted than the S23 and S24 Ultra, but in essence, you should still be getting the exact same photo on each of these phones, even if I think the S25 Ultra does give you slightly more detail, but not by a lot. That 5 times optical zoom on the S24 and S25 Ultra pretty much look exactly the same, but if you're upgrading over the S23 Ultra, that is where you're going to see the difference, because it would still be using that 10 megapixel camera to give you the 5 times zoom, whereas the S25 and S24 Ultra are using the newer 50 megapixel 5 times optical. So on the S23 Ultra, you're just not going to see detail as well in the photos because it is using the 10 megapixel camera. The only difference I've noticed on the S24 Ultra to the S25 Ultra with that 5 times lens is in lower light, because the photos just seem to have less noise in them, and this can also be said for the ultra wide as well. Yeah, it's a larger megapixel on the S25 Ultra and the colors do look a little bit more natural this time round, but I only really see the difference in low light situations, and it is only just a little bit noticeable. You can see video here from all three phones shot at 4K 30, and I just do think it looks better on the S25 Ultra. It has a better dynamic range and the details are much better, and that stabilization is just smoother than the other two Ultras, but it's not like a you must upgrade now better, it's just more refined. The biggest change I noticed here was that there's not as much lag in the video when panning with the S24 and S25 Ultra, whereas the S23 Ultra does just show a little bit of stuttering with some quick movement. The biggest reason you might want to upgrade from your S23 or S24 Ultra is for the newer processor. Now we know that this Snapdragon 8 Elite is in the S25 Ultra, however, it's not a huge jump over the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in the S24 Ultra, but where you will see a bigger upgrade is from the S23 Ultra's Snapdragon 8 Gen 2.